What happens when royalty walks into a studio thinking the rules don't apply to them? In just 34 seconds of one comment, a prince would go from composed to completely unhinged, turning a simple interview into television chaos that nobody saw coming. The studio lights were hot that day. Piers Morgan sat behind his desk, professional as always, ready to conduct what should have been a straightforward conversation. Prince Harry walked in with an air of superiority that filled the entire room. The tension was already there before anyone said a word. Piers started simple. "Welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us today." Harry barely nodded. His expression was cold, distant, like he was doing everyone a favor just by showing up. "So let's talk about your recent comments regarding the media," Piers continued, keeping his tone measured and professional. "You've been quite vocal about privacy, yet you seem to be everywhere. How do you square that circle?" Harry's jaw tightened. "I think you're misunderstanding the situation entirely." "Am I?" Piers leaned forward slightly. "Because from where I sit, and from where millions of viewers sit, it looks like you want it both ways. Privacy when it suits you, publicity when it benefits you." "That's a gross oversimplification," Harry shot back, his voice rising just a touch. Piers smiled calmly. "Then simplify it for us. Help us understand." The prince shifted in his seat. You could see the irritation building behind his eyes. "The press has hounded my family for decades. You wouldn't understand what that's like." "You're right, I wouldn't," Piers agreed. "But I do understand hypocrisy when I see it. You can't sell your story to the highest bidder and then complain when people want to hear more." Harry's face flushed red. "I have never sold anything. Everything I've done has been about telling my truth." "Your truth," Piers repeated, letting those words hang in the air. Interesting choice of words. Not the truth, but your truth. See, that's where we run into problems. Truth is truth. It's not subjective. "You're twisting my words," Harry snapped. "I'm using your exact words," Piers countered smoothly. "That's what good journalists do. We listen, and we question." The prince leaned forward, pointing a finger across the desk. "You're not a journalist. You're a tabloid hack who makes a living tearing people down." Piers didn't flinch. His voice remained steady, almost gentle. "I've been doing this for 30 years. Won awards, interviewed presidents, celebrities, royals. But sure, if name-calling makes you feel better about avoiding the question, go ahead." "I'm not avoiding anything," Harry insisted, his voice getting louder. "You ask loaded questions designed to trap people." "I ask fair questions that deserve honest answers," Piers replied. "If you feel trapped by basic questions about your own contradictions, that's not my problem. That's yours." The studio audience was silent. Everyone could feel this spiraling into something bigger. Harry sat back, crossing his arms. "This is exactly why I don't trust the media. You're all the same. Vultures circling, waiting to pick apart anything I say." "Vultures," Piers said thoughtfully. "That's harsh. I prefer to think of us as people holding public figures accountable. You live a life of extraordinary privilege, funded by taxpayers. They have a right to ask questions." "I don't live off taxpayers anymore," Harry shot back. "No. Now you live off Netflix deals and book contracts where you air your family's private matters," Piers said. "Much better." Harry's hands gripped the armrests of his chair. "You have no idea what my family has been through." "Then tell us," Piers offered. "That's why you're here, isn't it? To share your side, so share it. But share it honestly, without the victim narrative." "Victim narrative?" Harry's voice was incredulous now. "My mother died because of people like you." The room went completely still. Piers took a breath, his expression serious. "Your mother died in a tragic accident. It was horrible. And nobody disputes that. But don't you dare put that on me or use her memory as a shield against legitimate criticism." You don't get to tell me how to remember my own mother, Harry said, his voice shaking with anger. And you don't get to weaponize her death to avoid accountability, Piers responded firmly. That's beneath you, and frankly, it's disrespectful to her memory. Harry stood up abruptly. I don't have to sit here and take this. Actually, you kind of do, Piers said calmly, still seated. You agreed to this interview. You knew what show you were coming on. If you can't handle direct questions, you shouldn't have come. Direct questions? Harry was nearly shouting now. You're attacking me. I'm questioning you, Piers corrected. There's a difference. If you interpret questions as attacks, that says more about you than it does about me. Harry started pacing. The cameras followed him. This is unbelievable. The arrogance, the audacity. Says the man who's pacing around my studio, throwing a tantrum because I won't treat him with kid gloves, Piers observed. You wanted to be treated like everyone else, right? Well, this is how everyone else gets treated when they come on this show, with tough questions and honest conversation. Honest? Harry spun around. You wouldn't know honesty if it hit you in the face. Piers finally stood, matching Harry's energy, but keeping his composure. Sit down or leave, but don't stand in my studio insulting me because you can't defend your own positions. I don't have to defend anything to you, Harry spat. Then why are you here? Piers asked simply. Seriously, why did you agree to this interview if you weren't prepared to have an actual conversation? Harry's face was scarlet now. I thought we could have a civil discussion. Civil doesn't mean I throw you softball questions and nod along to whatever you say, Piers explained. Civil means we disagree respectfully. But respect goes both ways. You've called me a hack, a vulture, and suggested I'm responsible for your mother's death. That's not civil. That's unhinged. Unhinged? Harry's voice cracked. You're calling me unhinged? If the shoe fits, Piers said with a slight shrug. Look at yourself right now. You're shouting, pacing, hurling insults. All because I asked you about your contradictory stance on privacy. If that's not unhinged behavior, I don't know what is. Harry pointed at Piers again, his hand trembling. You are the worst kind of person. You hide behind this facade of journalism, but really you're just cruel. You enjoy making people uncomfortable. I enjoy truth, Piers said firmly. And yes, sometimes truth makes people uncomfortable. But that discomfort is necessary. It's how we grow, how we learn, how we hold ourselves accountable. Don't lecture me about accountability, Harry snapped. You've never been accountable for anything in your life. Piers laughed, a genuine laugh. I've been fired, sued, criticized publicly more times than I can count. I've owned my mistakes and moved forward. Can you say the same? Harry was breathing heavily now, clearly trying to regain control, but failing. This interview is over. You don't get to decide that, Piers said coolly. This is my show. You're a guest. If anyone's ending this, it's me. Fine, Harry said, ripping off his microphone. Then kick me off. Go ahead. Show everyone what a bully you really are. Piers walked around his desk slowly, deliberately. You want me to kick you off? Is that what this is? You want to play the victim so badly that you're trying to force my hand? I'm not playing anything, Harry insisted. You're playing games, Piers countered. This whole performance, the outrage, the accusations, the theatrics. It's all a game to you. But here's the thing. This is my show, my studio, my rules. And I don't tolerate guests who come here in bad faith. Harry threw his microphone onto the chair. I came here in good faith. You're the one who turned this into an interrogation. An interrogation, Piers repeated slowly. I asked you maybe 5 or 6 questions. Yet it's standard questions that any journalist would ask. If that feels like an interrogation to you, you're more fragile than I thought. Fragile. Harry's voice was dangerously quiet now. You think I'm fragile? I think you're so used to people bowing and scraping that you can't handle being treated like a normal person, Piers said bluntly. I think you surround yourself with yes men who tell you what you want to hear, and the moment someone challenges you, you fall apart. Harry took a step toward the desk. You don't know anything about me. I know what you show the world, Piers said, not backing down. And right now, you're showing everyone watching that you're entitled, thin-skinned, and unable to defend your own actions when pressed. Entitled? Harry's laugh was bitter. I gave up everything. My life, my home, my family relationships. And you call me entitled? Yes, Piers said without hesitation. Because giving up a life of extraordinary privilege to pursue an even more lucrative life of celebrity doesn't make you noble. It makes you calculating. Harry's eyes widened. Calculating? You think this was calculated? I think every move you've made has been calculated, Piers replied evenly. The interviews, the book deals, the streaming contracts. None of that happened by accident. You knew exactly what you were doing and what it would be worth. I was sharing my truth, Harry insisted, his voice rising again. For millions of dollars, Piers added. Let's not forget that part. You didn't share your truth out of the goodness of your heart. You got paid handsomely for it. Harry's jaw worked silently for a moment. Some of us have bills to pay. Bills, Piers repeated incredulously. You're talking about bills. Do you have any idea how tone-deaf that sounds? You live in a mansion. You have security teams. You fly private. Those aren't bills. That's a lifestyle choice. A lifestyle I'm forced to maintain because of security threats, Harry shot back. Threats that exist largely because you keep putting yourself in the spotlight, Piers countered. You can't complain about attention when you court it at every turn. Harry stood up abruptly, pushing his chair back with force. I don't have to sit here and take this. Then leave, Piers said simply. The door's right there. But know this. When you walk out, you're proving every point I just made. You're showing everyone that you can't handle the heat. Harry hesitated, just for a second. You could see the internal struggle. Part of him wanted to stay, to prove Piers wrong, but the anger was too much. I don't need to prove anything to you or anyone else, Harry said finally. Clearly you do, Piers observed. Otherwise you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't do interviews, write books, make documentaries. You're desperate for validation, but you only want it on your terms, and life doesn't work that way. Harry's hands clenched into fists. You're a miserable person, you know that? Truly miserable. Piers smiled slightly. I sleep just fine at night. Can you say the same? Or are you too busy worrying about what everyone thinks of you? That was the final straw. Harry turned and started walking toward the exit. His movements were sharp, angry. Every step radiated fury. Running away, Piers called after him. That's your solution to everything, isn't it? When things get tough, when questions get hard, you run. Harry stopped at the door, turned back one last time. At least I have the courage to walk away from toxic situations. You just wallow in them. Courage, Piers said, savoring the word. Is that what you call it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like cowardice. It looks like a grown man who can't handle basic scrutiny. Go to hell, Harry said, his voice low and venomous. Creative, Piers responded dryly, really showing that royal education there. Harry pushed through the door and disappeared. The sound of it slamming echoed through the studio. Piers turned back to the camera, completely unfazed. He straightened his jacket, smoothed his tie, and sat back down at his desk, as if nothing unusual had just happened. "Yeah, well," he said to the audience, his tone conversational. "I think that went well." A few nervous laughs rippled through the crowd. "You come on this show. You answer questions," Piers continued. "That's the deal. That's always been the deal. If you can't handle that, if you think your title or your last name makes you exempt from basic accountability, then you're in for a rude awakening." He leaned back in his chair, completely relaxed. We've had presidents on this show, prime ministers, celebrities, athletes, you name it, and they all managed to sit through an interview without having a meltdown. But apparently, that's too much to ask from some people. The audience was warming up now, a few more chuckles. Here's the thing about entitlement, Piers went on. It blinds you. It makes you think the rules don't apply to you, and that you deserve special treatment just because of who you are or where you come from. But in this studio, everyone's equal. Everyone gets the same treatment. Tough questions, honest conversation, no sacred cows. He gestured toward the empty chair where Harry had been sitting. That chair has held some of the most powerful people in the world, and they all understood that coming here means being challenged. It means defending your positions, explaining your choices, being held accountable. But some people, some people just aren't ready for that level of honesty. Piers picked up a pen from his desk, rolling it between his fingers thoughtfully. You want to know what really happened here today? A man came into this studio expecting to be treated like royalty, expecting softball questions and gentle handling. And when he didn't get that, when he was treated like every other guest, he couldn't cope. He lashed out, made wild accusations, threw insults, and ultimately ran away. He set the pen down carefully. That's not my failure. That's his. I did my job. I asked questions. Fair questions. Important questions. Questions that millions of people want answered. And instead of answering them, instead of engaging in good faith, he chose drama. He chose confrontation. He chose to make himself the victim. The studio was completely quiet now, everyone hanging on Piers's every word. And you know what the saddest part is? He had an opportunity here today. An opportunity to explain himself, to connect with people, to show a different side. But he wasted it. He wasted it on petulance and pride. Piers looked directly into the camera. If you can't answer simple questions about your own behavior without melting down, you've got bigger problems than a tough interview. You've got a fundamental inability to self-reflect. And that's something no title, no amount of money, no public relations team can fix. He paused, letting that sink in. We reached out before the show, confirmed the topics we'd discuss. Nothing was off limits that wasn't agreed to beforehand. He knew what he was walking into. And still, he couldn't handle it. That tells you everything you need to know. Piers stood up, buttoning his jacket. This show has always been about truth. About cutting through the nonsense and getting to the heart of matters. Some people appreciate that. They come here ready for real conversation, even when it's uncomfortable. Others think they're above it. And when they realize they're not, when they realize they have to actually engage and defend their positions, they fall apart. He walked toward the camera, his presence commanding. You can't cry about privacy and then sell your story. You can't demand respect while showing none to others. You can't play the victim while attacking anyone who questions you. That's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. Piers stopped, standing perfectly still. What you saw here today was someone confronting reality. The reality that being born into privilege doesn't make you special. The reality that people have every right to question your choices, especially when you make those choices public. The reality that you're not exempt from criticism just because you don't like it. He smiled, but it wasn't cruel. It was almost sympathetic. And I hope he learns from this. I really do. Because right now, he's on a path that only leads to more frustration, more anger, more isolation. And that's tragic, genuinely tragic. But it's also entirely self-inflicted. Piers walked back to his desk, sat down, and shuffled some papers. We've got more show coming up, but I wanted to address what just happened because I know people will talk about it. They'll dissect it, analyze it, take sides, and that's fine. That's healthy. But remember what you actually saw. You saw a host asking reasonable questions and a guest who couldn't handle them. Draw your own conclusions. He looked up at the camera one more time. Entitlement is a disease. It rots you from the inside. It makes you think you're better than everyone else, that you deserve special treatment, that the world owes you something. And when reality doesn't match that delusion, you lash out. You blame everyone else. You never look in the mirror. Piers tapped the desk lightly with his knuckles. That's what we witnessed today. A masterclass in entitlement. A case study in what happens when someone's lived in a bubble for so long they can't function in the real world. It's almost educational, in a sad way. The audience was completely engaged, every eye on him. So let this be a lesson. If you're going to put yourself out there, if you're going to seek publicity and share your story and demand attention, you better be ready for questions. Real questions. Hard questions. Questions you might not like. Because that's part of the deal. You don't get to control the narrative completely. You don't get to decide what people ask or how they respond. He leaned forward, your elbows on the desk. And if you're not ready for that, if the thought of being challenged makes you this uncomfortable, then maybe, just maybe, you should reconsider your approach. Maybe you should think twice before doing interviews. Maybe you should accept that privacy you claim to want so badly. Piers sat back again, completely at ease. But we all know that won't happen, because this isn't really about privacy. It's about control. It's about wanting to tell your story without anyone questioning it. It's about demanding a platform without accepting the responsibilities that come with it. He shook his head slowly. That's not how journalism works. That's not how honest conversation works. And that's certainly not how this show works. Never has been. Never will be. The camera stayed on Piers as he gathered his thoughts. When you come on this show, you're entering into an agreement. You'll be asked tough questions, and in return, you get the opportunity to answer them, to explain yourself, to defend your positions, to show people who you really are. That's valuable. That's important. But it requires courage. Real courage. The courage to be vulnerable, to admit when you're wrong, to engage with criticism constructively. He paused. What we saw today was the opposite of courage. It was defensiveness. It was hostility. It was a complete unwillingness to engage with anything that didn't fit a predetermined narrative. And when that didn't work, when the questions kept coming, the only response was to flee. Piers looked thoughtful. You know, I've had people disagree with me on this show. Strongly disagree. We've had heated debates, passionate arguments, real back and forth. But those people stayed. They defended their positions. They engaged. They showed respect, even in disagreement. That's what adults do. That's what people with actual conviction do. He gestured to the empty chair again. But when you can't do that, when your only response to challenge is anger and retreat, you're telling everyone that your positions are indefensible. You're admitting that you can't actually back up what you say. And that's a problem. The studio remained silent, everyone processing what they'd witnessed. I don't take pleasure in this, Piers said quietly. I really don't. I wanted a good interview. I wanted honest conversation. I wanted to understand his perspective. But you can't force someone to engage if they're not willing. You can't make someone answer questions if they'd rather throw tantrums. He looked down at his notes, then back up. This could have been productive. This could have been enlightening. This could have been an opportunity for real dialogue. But it takes two people to have a conversation. It takes mutual respect. It takes a willingness to be challenged, and to challenge back with substance, not insults. Piers stood once more. Instead, we got theater. We got drama. We got a performance designed to make me look like the bad guy for doing my job. But I think most people watching can see through that. I think most people recognize the difference between tough questioning and actual hostility. He straightened his tie one final time. So, that's what happened here today. Make of it what you will. But know that every word of this interview will be available. You can watch it back. Judge for yourself. See if the questions were unfair. See if the response was justified. I'm confident in what you'll find. Piers walked to center stage. We treat everyone the same here. No special privileges. No kid gloves. Just honest, direct conversation. If that's too much for someone, if that crosses some invisible line, then maybe they're not ready for public life. Maybe they need to step back and figure out what they really want. The camera slowly zoomed in on his face. Because you can't have it both ways. You can't demand attention and reject scrutiny. You can't seek platforms and refuse accountability. You can't play the public game and expect private treatment. Life doesn't work that way. The media doesn't work that way. And this show definitely doesn't work that way. Piers smiled one last time. That's all I have to say about what happened here today. Now, let's move on to our next segment. And with that, the show continued. The empty chair, a silent reminder of what happens when entitlement meets reality.